Welcome back to Learn SKN, and we're gonna just pick up with CSEC economics. The last video we did, we looked at section 2, production, economic resources, and resource allocation, and we basically started from specific objective number 2. Now, specific objective 1 is explained in a video I did for CSEC POB. So if you check that playlist, you'll see a video called production, which I'm going to link down in the description, so you can check that out later. That outlines the definition of production, productivity, difference between productivity and production, and those things. So you can link to that video and you'll get a more in-depth knowledge of this section. These are parts where POB and econ overlaps. So this is one such case where POB and econ overlaps. So you can check that video. I'm going to link in the description for objective number 1 and also objective number 3, where you describe the main sectors in an economy: the primary, secondary, and the tertiary. But just for a quick recap, I'll just give you a little overview of that one. But you can go and check that video on production, which I'm going to link in the video to understand it more in depth. So types of production: you have primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary production is the extractive industry, secondary is the manufacturing or construction, and tertiary, that would be the level that deals with services. So primary includes things like fishing, agriculture, forestry, mining. These are sectors that are involved in the extraction of raw materials from the earth. Alright, so you have the agriculture, fishing, forestry, and mining. And then you have the secondary level of production, which you have processing, assembly industries, construction industries. So you have examples like the sugar factory, aluminum bauxite plants, oil refinery, car assembly, consumer electronics, garment and clothing. So all these things take materials from the primary production and they turn them into finished products. Construction, where you build homes and things like that. And then you have the tertiary level, where you have more services such as financial services, banks, insurance companies, transport services, road haulage, bus services, airline, port, etc., communication, tourism services, retailing services, government services. So again, I will link the video in the description for a more in-depth discussion on objective 1 and objective 3. So today we're going to jump in at objective 4, where we explain the difference between short run and long run. The difference between the short run and the long run in economics. So let's just start right there. So if we look at the textbook here, the economics for CSEC textbook, we see that they have a definition for the cost of production. Now, in the previous video, we looked at the 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And we look at various aspects of those factors of production, but we never looked at the cost of these factors. So now, to produce anything, good or service, there's a cost. Nothing is free. There's a cost to producing a good or service. And the definition of a cost of production is the sum of payments for all those factors used to produce the goods as the cost of production. So that's the goods and the service. So the sum of payments for all the factors used to produce the good or the service is the cost of production. That's the definition of the cost of production. Now, remember, we said the factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So you can go back to that video and you can read up and learn those different aspects of it. So again, the definition for cost of production: the sum of the payments for all the factors of production used to produce goods and or services. Now, the production process can be divided in 2 basic periods of time: the short run and the long run. 2 periods of time. You have short run production and long run production. So let's look at short run based on the textbook first, and then we look at the slides. So the textbook says the short run is the period of time when it is not possible to vary the quantities of all the factors of production and the production used in the production process. So again, the short run is that period of time when it is not possible to vary the quantities of all factors of production used in the production process. So what is that exactly? That's a mouthful. That's textbook. So let's look at an easy definition for that one. Okay, so I think this definition is easily digest. Short run, the period of time during which at least one of one of a firm's inputs is fixed. As simple as that. So it's a period of time in which at least one of the firm's inputs is fixed. At least one of the factors of production, at least one is fixed. You cannot change it. Short run. The long run, on the other hand, based on the textbook, we have the long run defined as that period of time when all factors of production in the production process are variable. So what does this mean? It means that in the short run, at least one factor of production cannot change. It is fixed. It cannot change in the short run. In the long run, all factors of production can be changed. That's why I say they are all variable. All four can be changed. In the short run, at least one is fixed. At least one factor cannot be changed. So let me just, before we continue, let's just note that short run and long run, those time periods are somewhat relative. I say that because not all industries would have the same length of time for short run as they would for long run. For example, the short run for a construction company might be longer than the short run for, let's say, a baker. The short run for, let's say, Boeing to make an airplane, a jet, might be way longer than the short run for a car assembly plant or something like that. So based on the industry and the type of production, the short run and the long run can vary in time. There's no fixed short run time. There's no fixed long run time per se. A short run can be a year for some industry, whereas a long run can be a year for another industry. So there's no fixed time for short run and long run per se. You can't say 2 months, 3 months, 4 months is defined as a short run versus long run. It depends on the industry and the type of production. So with that said, let's continue what we're talking about. Let's continue explaining short run and long run. So you see here where they say the long run is a period of time in which a firm can vary all its inputs, adopt new technology, and increase or decrease the size of its physical plant. So let's look at some examples here. Let's look at a bakery. So in the short run, what can vary in the short run? You have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Those are the 4 factors of production. So if you're a baker, which one of those can you change in the short run? You can change the labor, because you can hire more people. You can hire 2-3 additional bakers. So that's varied, it's not fixed. You can invest in certain aspects of capital, right? You can invest in certain aspects. You can buy new ingredients and stuff like that. You can, let's see, what else can you change? You can hire a new manager, entrepreneurship, but you might not be able to improve the plant or improve the bakery in the short run. So in the short run, the bakery cannot build a new plant. So therefore, in the short run, that aspect, that input there would be fixed. You cannot just build a new bakery in 2-3 days. You can hire a new person in about 4 or 5 days, but you cannot build a new bakery in that span of time. So that is why that would be the short run. But in the long run, a year and a half, whatever, the baker can actually build a new plant, expand his current operations, build a new oven, import new equipment and stuff like that in a longer time period. So in the long run, the baker can change anything. He can hire new people, he can build a new premises, he can hire a new manager, fire the old one, he can go for a loan at the bank to improve his capital assets, stuff like that. So that's the difference right there. In the short run, you have at least one of the firm's inputs are fixed, at least one. So in this case, the plant, the bakery is fixed. It cannot change in the short run. But in the long run, you can build a new plant, open a new branch somewhere else. So that's what really differentiates the short run from the long run. In the long run, all inputs are variable. All factors of production are variable. All. You can change all of them in the long run. But in the short run, at least one is going to remain fixed. So let's get back to the textbook, what it says here. In the short run is defined as that time during which it is possible to vary the quantities of all factors of production and used in the production process. In the long run, it is possible to vary all of them. So in the short run, the time during which it is not possible to vary the quantities of all of the production of factors of production used in the production process. But in the long run, you can vary all. So same thing I said, you can change all in the long run, but in the short run, at least one remains fixed. So let's read an example here. If a firm wishes to increase production in the short run, it might do so by increasing some factor inputs and by keeping some constant. The factor inputs are varied and are termed variable factors. So variable factors are those that change. A variable factor is one the amount of which can be varied in the short run. Labor and raw materials are variable factors. Remember we said labor. Remember we said that the baker can hire new workers. You put out an ad today, you make some money tomorrow. Raw materials, you can buy more flour, buy more yeast, whatever. But the plant itself, the bakery itself, cannot change in the short run. You don't have enough time you cannot build it overnight. Unless, of course, you might be in China and they put about 1 million people on that one project and they build it in a couple of days. But for the most part, no, you cannot change the plant or open a new branch or buy new heavy equipment, new machinery in the short run. That's a long run that's a long run factor. All those things can happen in the long run. So that's basically it for the long run versus the short run, the definition of the two, and the difference between the two, the long run and the short run. Now we are going to be looking at costs. Objective 5, identify the costs associated with production. So you have fixed costs, variable costs, total costs, average costs, marginal costs. So we're going to look at the definitions of these costs next. But before we do that, let's just look at the definition for a fixed factor. A fixed factor is a factor that amount of which is not possible to vary in the short run, such as land and capital. They are usually fixed factors because sometimes to acquire new equipment and those things take a while. You have to go get financing and stuff like that, so that cannot really be done readily in the short run. So land also, the same thing, the plant, the baker, the bakery. If you're working in the farm, you can't really acquire a certain plot in such a short time. So the long run, most factors that are fixed would be either capital and or the land. So yes, let's jump into the cost of production now. Now the first one we're looking at is the fixed cost. What is the fixed cost exactly? So the fixed cost, as you can see on this slide, the fixed costs remain constant as output changes. The total cost, the cost of all the inputs a firm uses in production. Variable costs, costs that change as output changes. Fixed costs again, cost that remains constant as output changes. So let's break down this and explain what we're talking about here. Now, total cost. The cost of all the inputs as the firm uses its production. So that's fixed plus variable, as you see down here in the equation. Total cost equal fixed cost plus variable cost. That's how we get total cost. Fixed cost plus variable cost. So the total cost is a combination of fixed costs and your variable costs. Your variable costs are those costs that change as output changes. So based on your level of production, these costs can change. Whereas the fixed costs, they remain constant as output changes. And we're going to look at what we're talking about exactly. So let's revert back to our bakery analogy. So what would be a variable cost, or what would be a fixed cost for a baker? Okay, so a variable cost would be things like raw materials. So for a bakery, it would be things like flour, things like yeast, eggs, milk, all those stuff used for baking. Fixed cost might be the cost to rent the property, maybe the cost to lease the property, maybe insurance on certain capital in the property for the business. Those are things that don't change as production changes. So whether the baker bake 10 bread or 0 bread, the cost of rent is still going to be there. He still have to pay his rent at the end of the month, and the costs don't change. He will still have to pay his insurance at the end of the month. That cost won't change. So whether he produces 100 bread, 10 bread, 15 bread, at the end of the month, the cost for rent is still there. That's a fixed cost. The rent, the insurance, maybe the cost of the leasing the land, so other things like that. Some utilities, might be fixed. Like if you have a fixed internet, that would be a fixed cost. If you pay X amount per month, that would be a fixed cost. Now for the baker, now maybe he might have different orders. So therefore, maybe 1 month he might bake 10 bread, another month he might bake 5, and next month he might bake 50. So the output would vary, and because that output would vary, his variable cost would be different. So maybe 1 month where demand is low or the orders are low, he might buy less flour or less eggs or less milk. The next month he might buy more milk, less flour, or less flour, more milk. But you see what I'm saying here? It changes. His variable cost will change based on his level of production. So if he's producing 10, his costs are going to change. If he's producing 100 or 50, there are going to be different costs associated with different levels of output. But for fixed costs, it's going to remain the same. So the rent is going to be the same every month. The insurance premium, the same. The leasing of the land, the same. His loan, his mortgage, the same. Because whether he produces 1 or 100 bread, his fixed costs are going to remain the same. So that's how we differentiate between the fixed and the variable. Look at this chart here as it breaks down anti-K's cost. So output 0, fixed cost 10, variable cost 0, total cost $10 still. So they produce 0 things, output is 0, but yet cost is $10 because fixed costs don't change. Output, so you produce 1 now, total fixed cost still 10, see it doesn't change, come down 10 all the way. Variable cost is 5 now, and so total cost is fixed plus variable, and you have 15. So let's look at the scenario here. To illustrate all these new cost terms, let us look at a very simple example. Auntie K produces guava jam in a small business run from her home. This is a cottage industry. POB people, cottage industry. Table 5.1 shows a breakdown of Auntie K's costs. Note that total fixed costs and total variable costs can also be referred to simply as variable costs and fixed costs. Note that Auntie K's fixed costs remain fixed regardless of the number of bottles of jam produced. Variable costs are 0 when output is 0 and increase as output increases. Total costs increase as output increases. So that's it. Auntie K doing her jam, whether she produces 0 or 5, fixed cost is still going to be the same. Variable cost, on the other hand, will change based on the level of output. So at 1, variable cost is 5. At 2, variable cost is 12. At 3, variable cost is 17. At 4, variable cost is 34. And at 5, variable cost is 55. And that also affects total cost, because total cost is a combination of fixed and variable. So that's where you differentiate between these two, and that's how you analyze these two. Output changes with the variable cost, changes with output. The fixed cost remains the same. And like I said, fixed costs are costs that don't change as production changes, whereas variable costs are those that do change as output changes. And out here you have a graph showing the different cost curves that are associated with output. Now the fixed cost is 10 and it remains constant throughout. Look at that, straight across, remains the same. Total cost, it's going up, going up, going up. Variable cost is going up, going up, going up as output increases. So that's how we can see how variable costs and fixed costs come together to affect total costs. Let's look at another example. Here we have Jill Johnson's restaurant. Quantity of workers, we have 0 workers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It increases as time goes on. Quantity of ovens, so this is a fixed cost right here. A fixed factor, a fixed input, the ovens. They remain at 2 throughout the production process. Quantity of pizzas per week, now that's a variable because that changes. 0, 200, 450, 550, 600, 625, 640. And then the cost of pizza ovens, that's a fixed cost, remains at 800 throughout the production process. 800 all the time, 800. Now variable cost, that's the cost of workers. You can bring in more workers or let go some based on the demand, based on the orders, based on your production level. Sometimes you have slow season, sometimes you have high season, and when you have the slow season you might have to let off some people. So the variable cost here, you have zero because zero output. You didn't make any pizza. Probably this is when the Jill's Pizza restaurant is closed. You know, some people have a day off, so maybe this is Monday when they are closed, and so therefore there's no level of production, nothing is made, but yet you still incur that fixed cost of 800. The ovens are not going anywhere, they're still there, and they cost 800. Probably she took them out on higher purchase or something, and you have to pay the cost of the loan to get them either way. So it's 800 either way. Then you have the workers who did not work, variable cost, as I said, zero, but yet the fixed cost is 800 still. So look at this, average total cost. Now how do you get average total cost? That's the next definition. Let me just look at the definition quickly. Average total cost. So your average total cost is your total cost divided by the amount that you would have produced. So your average total cost is your total cost divided by the amount that you produce. So the maths behind that is average the total cost divided by how much you produce. For example, this right here, total cost, you divide it by the output and you would get your average cost. That is how that works. So let's look at an example for your average cost. So if you look here, you see that the average cost is 725. How did they get 725? Remember we said average cost is the total cost, which would be this one, 1450, divided by output, divided by the quantity, the output, or Q. And in this case, output would be 200. So your total cost divided by the quantity. So if you had to write it in a formula, it would look like this. This is how it would look if it were to be written as a formula. Average fixed cost, which is fixed cost divided by output or quantity. Average variable cost, which is variable cost divided by quantity or output. Same thing, Q represents output, and that gives you the average variable cost. And the average total cost would be your total cost divided by quantity or output, and that's how that would look as a formula. So based on the syllabus now, we would have looked at fixed cost, variable cost, total cost, average cost, and now we're going to look at marginal cost. Marginal cost, the change in a firm's total cost from producing one more unit of a good or service. So that's marginal cost. Marginal cost again is the change in a firm's total cost from producing one more unit of a good or service. So what does this mean? So you have your total cost. Your marginal cost would be the cost. So let's say you're producing. Okay, let's go back to the jam lady. Alright, let's go back to the jam lady. So she's producing her jams. Alright. So she have her output at 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's her total fixed cost, total variable cost, and her total cost. Now what if she produce a 6th unit of jam? Now if she produce a 6th unit, whatever cost comes about from producing that extra unit would be considered her marginal cost. Let's dig further into marginal cost. This is a textbook, and here they say one of the most important concepts that you will meet in your study of economics is the concept of marginal cost. Marginal cost, or MC, is the addition to the total cost from the production of one more unit of output. So that extra unit of output, the cost for producing that extra unit of output is the marginal cost. So when Auntie K produced 1 bottle of jam, it cost her $15. When she produced 2 bottles, the total cost is 22. The marginal cost of the second bottle of jam is 7. See the difference between the 15 and the 22 gave you the 7, and that's the marginal cost. You realize from this that we took away the cost of the first bottle, which was 15, from the cost of the second bottle, which was 22, and that's how we get the marginal cost. So that's how we calculate marginal cost. And so we're going to stay there for now, because we would have covered in the syllabus, we would have covered objective number 4, explain the difference between short run and long run. Objective 5, identify the costs associated with production, fixed costs, variable costs, total costs, average cost, marginal cost, the definitions. And we did some calculations, but in the next video, we're going to look at the calculations of the cost of production, and then we look at the cost curves. All right, so stay tuned, and of course, you hit the notification bell so that you know that when part 2 of this video drops. All right, so like, subscribe, share. Exams are coming in January, so share with your friends so that they can pass the exams as well. All right, so we're going to study it for now.